Hey everybody, welcome back to Jersey First and the Nader narrative. Today's interview I've really been looking forward to because talk about a hot topic, the State Board of Education in New Jersey. And it's not just them, it's really the whole category of parental rights, the schools. You definitely can agree that one of the most important topics of our time is what's happening to our children in our public schools. I mean, it even bleeds into the issue of school choice. I mean, this is what is on everyone's mind. And maybe even if you don't have children, you have an opinion now about what the schools are doing, about what the individual Board of Educations are deciding to do, about what the state is doing, about what the governor is doing, even the Attorney General. We've brought you some other shows with different individuals who have come in to talk about what they're doing at their Board of Education. We have brought you legislators who have strong opinions, but today I'm really excited to bring you actually the Vice President of the State Board of Education, who has been serving a long time and certainly knows what he's talking about, Andy Mulvihill. Andy, welcome to the show.
Hey.
So glad to have you here. I appreciate you giving us the time. I'm sure a lot of people have so many questions for you. I'm going to do my best to give you a chance to really get us in the inside, behind the doors of the State Board of Education and talk about some pretty hot topics and issues that have come up. So I want to start with your background. How did you end up on the State Board of Ed?
Well, it's an interesting story. I am a developer in northern New Jersey. We've got a resort called Crystal Springs up here, and my father was involved in the Mountain Creek ski area years ago, and he had started the Action Park. So we've been very active as developers and builders, built a lot of homes, a bunch of golf courses. And when you're a developer, you unfortunately need to be a little political because you kind of count on getting approvals, and there's a lot of regulatory agencies you have to go through. So we've had a lot of relationships with folks over the years. One of the guys that I know is a guy named Hal Wirtz, who was a county executive, a member of the county committee, and then became Secretary of Labor under Chris Christie. And Hal's a good friend. And when Governor Christie was looking for members to put on the State Board of Ed, they'd like to spread it around from the different counties. They needed a guy from Sussex County. Yeah. Hal approached me. He said, "Hey, do you want to be on the State Board of Ed?" And I said, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a big education guy. He said, "Well, what do you think of the teachers union?" And I said, "I think they're a problem." He says, "Well, you're the guy." So lo and behold, I get appointed, and I'll never forget the first day I'm going down there. I'm driving down to Trenton for my first meeting, and I'm saying to myself, "Andy, what are you doing? You're like, right. You don't like the government. You don't like regulation. Now you're going to become part of it? What are you, insane?" But then I get down there, and I meet a guy named Chris Cerf, who's at that time is the Commissioner of Education, and he's a Democrat. And I'm like, why did Christie appoint a Democrat? Well, it turns out this guy is a genius when it comes to education policy, and the things that he did to push choice in charter schools, teacher accountability, tenure reform, raising the stakes is what's required. He was all over it. The people that work for him, they were really aggressive, hardworking, dedicated people. And I said to myself, wow, I guess I got it all wrong. Government's good. Well, we had a good run during the Christie administration with Chris Cerf and then the subsequent commissioners. But then what happened is Murphy came in, and lo and behold, everything I expected to be about government happened. They cleaned house. They brought in some new guys. In fact, the guy they brought in, the fellow they brought in as commissioner, was a genius. He was the guy. I'm sorry with my phone here. He was the guy who took the graduation rate at Asbury Park and doubled it. I mean, it was unbelievable what he did. Asbury Park, struggling school district. He comes in and he doubles the graduation rate. How did he do it? He said, well, teachers can use grades as weapons, so nobody's going to get less than a 64 on a test, even if they just sign their name. So he just passed people through and to graduate. He lowered the bar, exactly opposite of what I learned from Chris Cerf. And that's the guy that Murphy picked to be Commissioner of Education. So I've been on the board for over 10 years now. Unfortunately, I'm on the losing side of a lot of votes now,
Yeah.
but I'm doing the best I can for the people of New
Right.
Jersey. And
Well, we'll talk about a few of those votes, Andy. But you're a respected business owner. Clearly understood why you were asked to serve, and I think it was timely. You saw the reforms during the Christie administration, which I think is one of the highlights of what he did in the state, certainly. So you were there for that, and then the slide into what Murphy did, and then COVID. I mean, you have been on the front lines of what really marks a lot of the important issues that we're facing right now. So you continue to serve. And I want to remind the audience, one of the things that makes the New Jersey governor so powerful is almost everything is by appointment. So the board is appointed, and of course we know it's voted in other states, but you guys are appointed. There are 13 members. As you look at the board right now, Andy, and we're going to talk about some specific votes, it's not supposed to be partisan. In your opinion, as you look at those members, does it feel partisan?
well, I think everyone looks at each issue as it comes forth and votes on it based upon what they think is right. It just so happens that there's a group of people that kind of think in general one way, and they tend to be the Republicans, and a group of people that think another way, and they tend to be the Democrats. So yeah, I guess it is partisan, although there are some Christie appointees that have not been voting with my group, the more conservative Republican type of voters. And it's also interesting, I think that when you look at the people that are voting opposite of my group that were appointed by Christie, I think some of those were appointments where he made a deal with Sweeney, where he gave Sweeney some appointments. And that's why I think you see some real left-leaning folks on there that were appointed by Christie. I think that was the deal with Scott. I don't know, but that's what I just kind of guess.
I've heard the same rumblings. Now, we started to really pay more attention to you guys for people that weren't paying attention before. In June of 2020, reminder to everyone, that's the height of the pandemic. We're definitely dealing with, the lockdowns that came in March and April. And in June of 2020, the state board passed a new curriculum. That started a firestorm. Now, when it was passed, a lot of people were busy dealing with their businesses, reeling from their kids being out of school. Andy, there was so much for us to be distracted by, and yet this curriculum passed. Was that a turning point? Because it looks like that to us when that curriculum focused on more sex education at younger ages and instituting a curriculum that opened up a lot of things that had previously not been introduced. Do you see that as a turning point with the board?
Well, I really think the turning point was when the administration changed and Murphy came in, and the agenda, there really is no real agenda other than to push some of this woke stuff. But there's no education reform as part of the Murphy agenda. There's no plan. If you asked the commissioner to articulate a plan to improve education in New Jersey, she couldn't, because there is no plan.
Yeah.
There was a plan with Christie, but I think what you're referring to is the health standards. So everyone understands, the state of New Jersey Department of Education comes up with standards that have to be voted on by the State Board of Education, and those standards are reviewed every 5 to 7 years. They're reviewed, and some amendments are offered, and then they're put in front of the board to vote for or against. Interestingly enough, the board doesn't create what they vote for. It's just presented to them, and they can either vote yes or no. If they're smart, they can negotiate a little bit by saying, we're going to vote no, you better change this. So what happened in 2020 is these health and human standards came up, and there was this massive change to teach things that I think are completely inappropriate to our elementary students, namely teaching children about masturbation in elementary school, about anal sex, about abortion being a choice if you get pregnant. It's really pretty dramatic, and I argued to no end, and I couldn't believe that the board went ahead and voted to approve those. And the reaction was a little delayed because of COVID. Schools had 2 years, had up to 2 years to implement them. So the standards are something that schools have to abide by. How you teach them is the curriculum, and that's up to the schools. But those standards you're supposed to abide by. And
Right.
I know there's a number of schools that are nonetheless pushing back on that.
Right. And we've seen that, right? We've seen a lot of people now run for Board of Education. I guess there's always something good that comes out of a crisis, because last year we had over 400, I would say like-minded, if I can say it, even though it's a nonpartisan race, people run and win Board of Education seats. And now you're seeing the fights. And the fight started with, once that curriculum was sort of unveiled, or the standards, it's a better way of saying it. You're right. It's the standards. And then how they teach it is up to them. But we know that opened the door to so many things. So that sort of started waking people up. I also think, Andy, and wonder if you agree, that the teaching by Zoom and all the school shutdowns, parents who maybe weren't involved before, suddenly their eyes were open. Didn't that change a lot of parents' views of what was happening in the schools?
Oh, I would say so. I mean, I think it was very apparent that parents had a view into the classroom,
Yeah.
and were, because their kids were home with them, they
Right.
got really to see what was going on. And there's been a push towards pushing the progressive agenda in the schools for quite some time now. I mean, even the NJEA, which is the teachers union that's supposed to represent the teachers to improve their lot, right, to try to make things better for teachers. I get that. But the NJEA is actually pushing this progressive agenda that has nothing to do with representing the interests of their members. So
Right.
everywhere you turn, this stuff is finding its way, and I think that the parents are kind of waking up and see what's going on, and they don't like it. I mean, even this whole thing with transgenderism, which is really problematic. I mean, look, kids that have a transgender or issue, or have gender dysphoria, they need our love, they need our compassion, they need our
Yes.
guidance, they need
Yes.
their parents' guidance. We have to do everything we can to help these children. But it is not something that the state of New Jersey should be putting their finger in and trying to dictate like Big Brother. I mean, it's just
Right.
outrageous
Right.
that the state of New Jersey is telling schools that they can't have a policy where parents are notified by the teachers as to what's going on. It's outrageous, and it's wrong. So I think parents have woken up to what's going on, and they're demanding that things are not pushed as far left as they're going. I mean, and I really think that the Democrats have really made a mistake here. I think they're going to go down with the ship on this issue, and I think you're going to see a lot in the elections this fall. You've seen it on the school boards, as you said.
Yeah, and Andy, I think it's the issue of our time, and sometimes when it seems really dark, it's actually a gift, because that's when people wake up, which we need. You said something very important that people need to understand who are watching this, and it's not really commonly understood. The board is not sitting there coming up with things. You're presented these things that you have to vote on, and so it's really interesting to see where the influence is, right? Who is generating these policies, procedures, ideas, and bringing them to you? And let's talk about Chapter 7. Let's talk about that vote and Chapter 7, which does a lot, and there's a lot of language around it, but ultimately part of it, and it passed in a 6-5 decision, is to have gender neutral language. So talk to me about Chapter 7. How much of a fight was that, and how do you feel about it?
Well, I would tell you that all policy on the education issues doesn't come from the department. It comes from the governor's office. When they pay attention to certain issues, which there are very few that they pay attention to, but when they find something like dealing with the trans issue, they're very laser focused on that, and they direct the department precisely what to do. I really don't think that the commissioner has a lot of say. I may be wrong, but that's not my sense. So there were a number of things. There was actually some things in Chapter 7. I don't think people have realized this whole demand to have schools do equity studies and to come up with equity plans, I think is very dangerous. But the other two things, this idea of changing the chapter so it was gender neutral, that didn't bother me so much because it's not pushing an agenda. It's just, rather than referring to a male teacher or a teacher, it's just gender neutral. So that wasn't that big a deal. I think people made more of that than they needed to. But this idea that if you're going to teach sex ed and you decide to separate classes by male and female, you could have a choice. You could teach it all together. You can separate them. They're now saying if you separate it by male and female, it's got to be by gender identity, not biological sex. And the theory is that you would somehow be discriminating against a little boy that feels like he's a girl if you were to have that little boy go in with the boys. It doesn't make a lot of sense for a few reasons. Number one is if the girls are going to be talking about girls' anatomy, what's a boy doing in a class talking about girls' anatomy? And the other thing is they're saying, well, we got to protect this trans child. Okay, I understand the goal and the intent there and the passion for that. But what about the girls? Girls are sex is a protected class. So what about the little girls that want to be in a class talking to a female teacher about something that's kind of, a little scary and a little embarrassing, and there's a little boy sitting there next to them? What about their rights? I think we kind of lose sight of that in this this effort to go way all in on the trans thing, and I don't know that it's serving anyone. That particular policy is serving anyone well.
It feels as though we are doing everything for such a small minority, and it's sort of strange, and it's very intense, the fight. And you said earlier that individuals who are having gender, issues, and it's really a mental health issue. These kids need love and compassion. But there's a tyranny of the minority here that seems to take all the oxygen out of the room. And you had mentioned earlier as well the fight about whether parents can be notified if their child is struggling with this, and they're effectively struggling with mental health issues, and yet we're saying, and the governor is saying you can't tell the parents. So I say to you, where are parental rights? And you brought up the girls. Where are women's rights, girls' rights? It's funny how that was a fight of the left for decades, and now it's turned. How do they look at that issue? Those of your friends and colleagues, I should say, who are on the other side, how do they defend that?
I haven't really heard a good defense for it at all. It's just this, you got to be all in or else you're out mentality. It's amazing how the left has embraced that, and they're throwing women's rights to the side. Even the fact that they're throwing freedom of the speech to the side these days as well, because everything that you say that they disagree with is now hate speech. It's crazy. But I think what we really see is we're seeing the fact that the state of New Jersey and the governor really thinks that Big Brother, that the state knows best, that the state knows better than parents. And I don't know that it's, I certainly, when you get between kids and the parents, that's like the ultimate wrong. But I think the bigger issue is that it's just, once again, it's the invasion of the state of New Jersey trying to stick their nose in things they don't belong in. And it's the power they're trying to exert that reminds us of Maoist China or Nazi Germany or the gulags of the Soviet Union. That's what we're seeing. And that's what is, and the Murphy administration, I don't get it. It's just like, they don't seem to see that's what they're doing. And they're misguided and they're wrong. And I'm so happy to see people standing up against that.
Oh, it is good to see that. And, I have to ask the thing, we're talking about schools and what you do on the Board of Education, and we have yet to even talk about reading, writing, and arithmetic, right? I mean, we've lost so much learning as a result of COVID, and the focus is yet on these other things. So how often does the board talk about and is concerned about these test scores? We used to be seen as one of the best public school systems in the nation, and we've slid a long way. We have generations of kids now who are struggling. How are we going to compete, and why isn't the board addressing that?
Again, we deal with what's put in front of us. We don't really have a choice of if I decided that we had to do X, Y, and Z to improve education in New Jersey, I can't implement it. It's got to be generated. Like, I wanted to reopen Chapter 7, the one that we just voted on and passed, and then then the backlash from the citizens of New Jersey and the legislature, both Republican and Democrat. I thought I had a chance. Maybe these people that voted for it would see the error of their ways. And I've come to find out the only way to get it reopened is if the commissioner chooses to reopen it. As a board, even if the board voted that they wanted to reopen it, they couldn't. They couldn't do that.
Wow. That's eye-opening, Andy, that even, as intelligent and gifted and experienced as you are, you're really there to vote on what's put in front of you, which I don't think the citizens truly understand. And so there are sort of these unnamed forces. Yes, it's the governor and it's his administration, but they're the ones pushing in. You guys have to just vote. So, that's frustrating to hear, right? But
Yeah, I'll tell you, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'll tell you, we have a vote tomorrow, which is interesting, on the math and English standards.
yeah,
And there have been revisions which my colleagues that are a little better schooled in the really the intricacies of teaching say it's really good. It's really great stuff. The revisions they've made, but injected into it is the agenda of it turns out in this case, not the governor, but the governor's wife, Tammy Murphy, who's a lovely person. I actually talked to her on the phone about this.
yeah,
And they want to teach climate change in math and English. And there seems to be a goal, and it's been stated very publicly, that we should teach climate change in kindergarten through 12th grade. So in every grade, in every subject matter. Now, to me, if you're really going to do that, it would seem to me like that's kind of an indoctrination where you're making that such a priority. But I guess it depends on what you do teach in regard to that. But as you said, right now in the state of New Jersey, only about half the kids in general, on average, can pass a standardized English test. And only about a third of them can pass a standardized math test. Furthermore, if you look at Newark, other than charters, Patterson, Trenton, Camden, Asbury Park, like 10% of the kids can pass those standardized tests. It's a disaster. So where are we going to find the time to teach climate change in math class?
yeah,
And frankly, why climate change? Why shouldn't we talk about poverty? Or
right.
why shouldn't we talk about civics in math class? I mean,
Yeah,
why? Because it's the flavor of the day. It's the priority of the people in power, that they have their pet peeve of what they wanted to teach children about, an agenda that they want to push. I talked to Chris Surf, again, a guy who think the world of, who was the former commissioner, and I was talking to him about some of this stuff. He says, Andy, you got to stay on the mission. The mission is the basics. Math, English. As soon as you get distracted from that mission, you just lose sight and you lose. And I think New Jersey, which has been one of the top in the country, is losing its footing.
yes.
And there's massive deterioration that's occurred as a result of these policies.
And the reality is, in order to right the ship, we're going to need a new administration. And that's clear from what you said today. And we are 2 years from that, hopefully, roughly. It brings up a natural conversation. And I want to sort of end with this, even though I could talk to you for an hour or longer. So we're going to have you back, because you're an incredible resource for us and so many parents that need to understand and are so frustrated, at least have insight into what's going on. But the natural conversation now is school choice. We're seeing it grow and grow across this nation with different tools, ESAs, charter schools, being able to transfer within a public school system. So school choice is definitely a growing demand across the country. Of course, we see it more robust in the red states. No surprise there. Andy, Christie ushered in what is, I guess, our school choice program, which is the inter-district, school choice, being able in some cases to move. But we don't have a lot more than that. Charter schools, yes, magnet schools. People don't really know about it. You have private schools, but you have to be able to afford them. Where do you think we are on school choice, and do you see the potential for more in New Jersey?
Well, it's interesting that Governor Murphy has chosen to be an opponent of school choice. There are actually a fair number of Democrats that see the light on this issue because, frankly, their core constituents in the inner cities, the less fortunate, those impoverished people who they say they're the champions of, those are the ones that want it the most. Unfortunately, the governor didn't see that. And for the first 5 years of his administration, he did not approve a single new charter school or an expansion. Thank goodness that has changed this past year. And he seems to have seen the light. The thing that we have working against us in New Jersey is the NJEA, the teachers union. Look, don't get this wrong. I love the teachers. The teachers are the greatest. I think teachers are underpaid. I think we should pay them
Great.
more. I
Agreed.
think that we should, hold them up on a pedestal. It's a real hard job, but their organization, the union, is really problematic because they are anti-charter.
Yeah.
And they're anti-charter because the charters are not unionized, and they collect dues, $140 million a year in dues, of which they spend tens of millions of dollars on politics, giving to politicians. That's why they have so much power. But they've been anti-charter. And, all I heard when I first came in was about the achievement gap, about how wealthy kids in the suburbs do better than the impoverished kids in the cities, or even within in the inner cities. You see difference between races and how they perform. They call that the achievement gap. And they've tried everything to fix that. And lo and behold, charter schools have come around. And guess what? The kids in Newark in the charter schools on average are outperforming the state average in New Jersey. It's a miracle.
Wow.
And we need more of it.
Yeah.
And, we've got some of it in Trenton. We have some in Patterson, not nearly enough. We need a lot more of it. And we got to get behind that, because when you try, it's interesting when you try to figure out what's the best way to educate kids, what's the best new gimmick, how should you go about doing it? You know what? I don't need to know any of that. If I let the parents decide where the kids go to school and they have the choice, guess what? The schools that are good, people are going to go to. The ones that don't do well, people aren't going to go to. It's like capitalism applied to education. There's nothing, though, that says that really that the state needs to be in charge of education. Yes, you can say that they should pay for it, but why does the state have to run education? I don't know that makes sense.
Good question. It's a basic question we need to ask ourselves. And, we can do a show on the NJEA. And look, competition, you and I are both fans of capitalism. If we have competition in education, guess whose salaries go up naturally? Good teachers.
The good teachers.
The good teachers. And that's who we have to support. And as long as the NJEA, who's running it, and he's making over 7 figures. Look, I have no problem with people making good money, but does that make sense? And is he really fighting for the teachers? So we have a lot of issues, Andy. We have a lot of issues, but I just want to thank you that you have served. I pray you can continue to serve. We need more of you and your background and your view of the world. And you're a fighter, and that's what we need. I know that it must be frustrating for you at times that you're only voting on things, so to speak, but things may change. And I don't know if you do, but I feel a change coming in this state. Parents who are waking up, isn't that our strongest weapon?
Yeah, parents are waking up. They're participating. Charter schools are succeeding. Choice is succeeding. You can't hide behind this stuff. I think that, the truth and what works is going to come out in the end.
Yeah.
So I have hope for the future. We're going to hit a lot of road bumps in the meantime.
Yeah.
But we need reform, and people get it. And I think it's going to come. And we're just going to have to keep our nose to the grindstone and trying to do what's right for the kids.
Absolutely. And Andy, again, on behalf of all of the parents in New Jersey who have woken up and see someone like you fighting the best that you can for us, I appreciate it. Will you come back?
Oh, absolutely. You're inside New Jersey's the best. I love Rosemary, and I'm getting to know your organization. I love what you guys are doing. Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you, Andy. All right. And to my audience, guys, share this, and the more you understand about how the state board works, the more you can figure out your strategy. But at the end of the day, it is about voting. As you heard Andy say so many times, the administration right now is controlling all of this. So make sure you vote. Andy, we will talk to you soon. Thank you for coming on again.
All right.